but we'll talk later. It's the, what do I want to say? Raising our profile as a county, as a region. So
Mhm.
good for your city for being leaders in this regard.
Good deal. Thanks for letting me know.
Hi, Chair Ogier. Did something happen to Dawn? Oh, I thought Dawn disappeared. I just wanted to let you know that I heard from Commissioner Webb and she is not feeling well, so she will not be in attendance today. So I just wanted to let you know.
Thank you. I'm sorry to hear that. I hope she recovers quickly. In the meantime, congratulations on, right now you're up by 58 votes on the short-term rental. So it's good.
I hope we can get back to work on
We're still a few minutes in front of 10 o'clock, so we will wait until it hits 10 before we actually open things up. All right, let us get started. Do we have a quorum? I want to make sure we have all of enough members of the,
I can go ahead and do roll call for you if you'd like.
okay, yeah, that'd be good, Monica, thank you.
Okay, Chair Quila,
Here.
Vice Chair Bangs. So, here, I see you. Commissioner Toyoka.
Commissioner Toyoka just contacted me. His son had an accident, so he's not able to join us.
Okay, and I shared with Chair Ogier, Commissioner Webb also called in sick. Chair Ogier.
No, wait, Commissioner Thompson.
Oh, I am so sorry, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Thompson.
Yep, I'm here. Thank you.
Chair Ogier,
I'm here.
Vice Chair Brown,
Present.
Danelle Davis. And I apologize if I'm not seeing a hand. I'm not seeing her. Okay. Tita Montero.
Here.
Okay. And Gretchen Allen.
Looks like she's just connecting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Seems
Oh,
to drive-
perfect. Okay, so you do have a quorum. Thank you.
Good, all right. Then welcome back, everyone, to the second meeting of the Countywide Budget Commission for Clatsop County. We are going to start today. We're going to pick up where we left off last time. And the first series of budgets are the land use, housing, transportation, economic development, and capital. And to introduce those budgets, we have the Public Works Department Interim Director, Terry Hendricks.
Actually, Chair Ogier, I'm going to kind of go over a summary of the whole functional area similar to last time. And then if there are any questions, we're happy to answer them. And we have the Public Works staff available as well.
Very good.
So for this functional area, land use, housing, transportation, economic development, and capital, the majority of the funds that make up this functional area are remaining status quo. There is an overall decrease of approximately 2.4 million from the current year, and that's primarily a result of the 6.6 million decrease with the completion of the new jail that was budgeted in special projects. This functional area encompasses those services that are provided by Public Works that includes fisheries, also includes community development, as well as special funds such as the Industrial Revolving Fund and Special Projects Fund, as well as the economic development component associated with tourism funds. This functional area is funded 94% by dedicated resources and 6% by discretionary resources. There is an overall adopted increase of 1.3 in this functional area. One FTE of that is for an additional mechanic. And then there was also some shifting of where these FTE are at with the creation of the new Public Works Fleet Management Division, who will be maintaining all of the county-owned fleet, and as in addition to the heavy equipment for the Public Works Department, which they have always maintained. Some of the projects budgeted for within the Special Projects Fund include those identified through the board's annual strategic planning process. And these include hiring an outside consultant to update the comprehensive plan goals for goals 16, 17, and 18 that pertain to environmental quality. It allocates funds in response to the strategic facilities plan for the remodel of the 800 and 820 exchange facilities, the Duane Street Annex, and a leased space in Seaside to improve equitable access to county services for the public. It includes, in addition to the ongoing contract with the Lower Columbia Tourism Committee for sustainable leave no trace tourism, again, in accordance with the board goals, there is also a proposed increase in the tourism budget that includes an additional $20,000 to the Lower Columbia Tourism Committee to complete the evaluation of an additional 30 sites in the Seaside and Cannon Beach areas. They originally received a grant through Travel Oregon to assess 40 sites in the Astoria and Warrenton areas through a group called Wheel the World. And this work evaluates tourist destination sites for accessibility, provides recommendations for improvement, and includes the individual sites and communities on their travel booking site, which is geared towards travelers with disabilities and those who are traveling with them. So this is a known issue that LCTC wants to be able to help local businesses identify and address should they choose to. And it also fits with the board goals in regards to equitable access. The tourism budget also reflects a transfer to the Special Projects Fund to contribute towards the capital construction of the park at the Westport Ferry Landing, as well as the docks at Carnahan Park. Both of these see high tourism utilization, and so a portion of the construction of these projects will utilize tourism funds in accordance with the statute. Those are all of the significant changes for this functional area, and so I'm happy to address any questions you all might have.
Please raise your hand, use the raise hand function if you do have questions. I had a general question that I talked with Assistant County Manager Steele about yesterday, which has to do with the level of fees that we're charging. In a number of these areas, the fees are actually budgeted lower than in previous years. And the county has stated as part of its budget goals that it wants to reassess and improve, if possible, fee income. Ms. Steele really explained very well what the county's thinking and position there is, but I think it would be useful to have her speak to everyone on that topic.
Sure. So in regards to a lot of the fees that we collect, the county is not looking to make a profit. We want to make sure that our fees are in line with other jurisdictions for the services that are being provided. And so in some instances, where you might assume a fee, such as in code enforcement, we have no way to actually force people to pay those fines. We are able to put a lien on their property. And so the approach that staff, with the support of the board, has taken is that to try and have more of an approach where we work with the individuals to get the work accomplished, to get them in compliance. And then in other areas as well, we don't want to make the fee so outrageous that then people are choosing to do things illegally, either without permits or dumping things illegally that then are more of a hazard to the community as a whole from an environmental perspective. We also annually review, which will be coming to the board in June, our fee schedule. And so where applicable, if it is a fee for service, that is just to the benefit of the individual or the individual business, then we do make sure that those fees are covering the costs themselves, and that is not a burden to other taxpayers. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you. I appreciate this conversation. The county, as you probably know, colleagues, has been actively I want to say managing short-term rentals gradually. We have the complaint process. We have a good neighbor policy. We've been temporarily stayed in our efforts to regulate by the referendum that you noted earlier, Chair Ozer. One of the things that we've noticed, at least I've noticed, is that in our complaint system, some neighbors are what I would call hyper-vigilant. Someone, for example, made a complaint because there were some crackers on the ground. I mean, it seems silly, doesn't it? But people want to make a point and create a record of problems. So I think when staff comes to the board, I hope for the well-being and fairness issue that we look a little more closely at the actual cost of investigating what I would consider frivolous complaints, because I think we do have in our ordinance the capacity to do that. And I do want to deter, I would call it an abuse of the process simply to harass neighbors. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments that people want to make on this group of budget items? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on.
Sorry, I did
Oh.
see, Norm had his hand raised.
Thank you very much.
Just a quick question on page 365. If I'm in the right section here, we're increasing the budget for temporary help by about 50%. And the rationale behind that is?
Sorry, I'm trying to get to the page that you are referencing and
365.
365.
Second line from the top.
I
This is the
am
surveyors.
going, yeah, it's for the surveyor land corner, and I will let Vance hop in on that one. But I do believe, is that for if you were able to hire an intern for the summer through the Clatsop Works program?
Yeah, that's a line item we typically include in there. Some years we're able to get one, some were not. Since that public land corner fund is collected and it stays in an account and it's specifically for public land corners and surveying, this year we're probably not going to get an intern. We've got one of my staff, my tech is retiring, and so there's not going to probably be enough time to devote to an intern, but we like to try to get one if we can normally.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you. Others? Okay, and if I miss your hand, please speak up. The next, we have two budget items, two lines under the culture and recreation, parks maintenance and park land and acquisition. That starts on page 436.
Thank you, Chair. So this functional area includes the fair general operation, parks maintenance, and parks maintenance parks and land acquisition. It reflects an increase of approximately $374,000, and it's almost entirely funded through dedicated resources, with only 8% of expenditures being covered by discretionary dollars. And that is primarily for the parks maintenance services. Overall, again, the budgets within this area are status quo. The Fair and Expo budget does reflect an increase in capital of $277,000. This is for a grant that they will be receiving from Business Oregon to be used towards capital improvements. And they are hoping to use these dollars to replace the roof on their exhibit hall. There is also an increase in contractual services for the hiring of a consultant to help the Fair Board develop a master plan, so that way they can have a kind of a strategic direction moving forward. And that is, those are the only significant changes within that functional area. Are there any questions or comments?
And are you at a point now where the fair management and board have kind of stabilized?
Yes, so thank you for asking. The Board of Commissioners and the Fair Board did earlier in this fiscal year sign an updated MOU. And so the Fair Board continues to provide the policy and direction of the fair. And the fair manager and staff are overseen by the county manager's office. Kyle Sharpstein is our new fair manager, and he is on the meeting as well. And he has a fair maintenance person, Kelly Culver. And then he recently hired an admin assistant who will be starting, I think, in the next week or so. So they will be fully staffed. And then they will also be bringing on temporary staff to assist with the preparation of the county fair in August.
Great. Anyone else have a question or comment on culture and recreation? If not, seeing no hands.
One more.
Oh,
one
Norm
more.
has one. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, no, I am, yes.
Sorry about that. And my finger doesn't hit the unmute button fast enough. Because I'm using one hand and not both. I noticed that the parks foreman, salary increase for the parks foreman is significant. Did we feel that we well, was this is this kind of a one-off assessment of this person's compensation package, or is this kind of an ongoing, you look at ranges, you look at salary surveys to identify where we might be needing some additional compensation? This was a 16.2% increase.
Yeah, so and we do have the Steve Meshke, I do believe, is on the call, but we do regularly assess and make sure that when we have our various management positions, that they are fairly compensated in regards to the positions that they are overseeing. And we did add an additional staff person in that department. So previously we just had a park ranger, and because of the number of parks that we now have, as well as the services that are at some of those parks, it was necessary to hire somebody to be able to manage the park ranger position, as well as any temporary staff that we have. And so the parks foreman is not a newly created position, but it was a position that was created in the current fiscal year. And then they are eligible in regards to the step increases as well as the COLA. Anything more, Steve?
No, I think you covered it. Just with the growth of the parks, it was a one-man show out there, and now we have a second park person and more seasonal help. So we felt that instead of a lead worker, we just came up with a park foreman, and it's a position that the parks used to have years ago, and it was kind of just shifted around, but we've just brought it back in play now.
Very good. I'm fine.
Good. Okay. All right. We will then go on to the next group, land use, housing, transportation, and economic development and capital. This is starts on page 368 with the planning division.
So we did, I apologize, we did kind of touch on that when we went over the functional area of land use, transportation, housing, and development. But if there are any additional questions concerning community development, building codes, and video lottery, we're happy to address those questions as well.
Yeah, I did have one question on page 389. We are providing $70,000 to Cedar, and that's the same as in prior years, but the amount of activities that they have been engaged in has increased substantially, and the economic benefits to the county have increased as well. And so I'm just wondering if we should increase that amount.
So I will say that the board through ARPA dollars has a funding concept. And we have, and I apologize, I don't have that funding concept on me right now, but we have allocated in this current fiscal year, and then we will be allocating in the next fiscal year as well, dollars specifically to SBDC to help with the Small Business Development Center, because through COVID, they did hire increased FTE to a large number of staff to be able to provide support to businesses. And that has been going very well. And so through those ARPA dollars, we are continuing to provide that support. I want to say, and I don't know, Dawn, if you have it off the top of your head, but I want to say that it's approximately $125,000 that we are providing to them.
Chair Ozer, members of the board. Yes, I think it's just over 125,000, I believe, a year, and we'll be providing that through 2024 to SBDC.
Good. I certainly think that's money well spent, and that pays for itself many times over. Is that part of this there's a $95,000 amount for economic activities opportunity? Is that?
No, the economic opportunities is and Gail, that is for hiring a consultant for an economic opportunity analysis. It's part of a 20-year forecast of population and job growth. And it's used to help local governments better understand which industries and services will thrive in a region and how land and urban growth boundaries can best support that economic growth.
Okay, good. I know the city of Astoria engaged in that activities some years ago, and it really didn't. It was sort of one of those plans that ends up on the shelf more than anything else, and so I certainly hope this one is implemented when you bring it out.
Chair Ozer, Commissioner Thompson has a question.
Yes, Commissioner Thompson, please.
Well, I'm just moved to respond. What an excellent observation. I'd point out that our county is part of COLPAC, Columbia Pacific Economic Development. And in that regard, we cover Columbia, Clatsop, Tillamook, and Western Washington County. We're engaged through staff and through the interaction of both elected public officials and business leaders to continue to investigate and to develop businesses within the region. Our relationship with Regional Solutions, Chair Quila is our delegate. I'm the chair of COLPAC, so I know more about that and have been on that since I came on as a commissioner. We're engaged in that. It never shows up in the budget, but that's also activity that is, bless you, it is pollen season, that is also focused intently on developing economic vitality within the region. I just wanted to call that to your attention since you mentioned what's not on the shelf, but what's actually working by inference. Thank you.
Good.
And I will add that this was budgeted for in the 22-23 fiscal year. It has, none of it has been spent though. It was put on hold as staff have continued to work with the board on the comprehensive plan. So it was budgeted in the current fiscal year. Nothing was spent, and so it's being proposed for next year.
Other questions? I'm not seeing any, so we will move to page 183. This is Public Safety and Justice. And in particular, we are looking at juvenile crime.
So again, we kind of touched on this in our last meeting when we went over the public safety and justice functional area. There are not any significant changes to it. There is an slight FTE increase, but this FTE was for a current position that is part-time, and they're just increasing the part-time position by more hours, and it is supported by state funding for programming.
Any questions or comments on these two items?
Norm
Moses?
has a question.
Yes, Mr. Brown.
Just this terminology caught my attention here on page 183. It references detention bed rental service. So renting
Yes.
detention, what is a detention bed rental service?
So, so the county, a number of years ago, probably about a decade ago, we closed our detention facility. It used to be located out at the Oregon Youth Authority, where our new adult jail is. So we rent detention beds through Yamhill County. So
Oh,
if there
okay, I
is a
see.
juvenile, yeah.
Others wish to comment or question? Okay. We will then move to the a group of items known as general government. It starts on page, and I think we'll do the clerk, Tracy Kravenko will be able to answer questions, and also the assessment and taxation, the director, Suzanne Johnson. So this starts on page 280 with the Board of Property Tax Appeals, known to its friends as BOPTA.
So I will go ahead and kind of just give an overall general summary for the general government functional area. And then if there are additional questions, we can touch base on those. So again, we want to thank, I feel redundant when I continue to say this, but we want to thank the work of department staff in regards to helping us develop status quo budgets. You know, there have been a lot of concerns in regards to potential impacts from various things such as the HCP. And so when we asked staff to develop their budgets, we asked them to maintain status quo as much as possible and not asking for additional FTE. So again, this functional area maintains that status quo status for the most part. It includes organizational units whose activities are of general government nature. The resources used to pay for the expenses in this functional area are 48% discretionary, with the remaining 52% being dedicated. This functional area decreases by approximately 1.1 million, and this is a result of a decrease in transfers to other funds, specifically not transferring to the general fund stabilization for the proposed 23-24 fiscal year. The functional area as a whole indicates an overall increase of 1.25 FTE. However, none of this is new FTE. One FTE is for the county council position that when we budgeted for in 22-23, at the time we thought that would be going back to a contracted position, but we were able to hire a county council for in-house. And so that is the position that we have had in this current year rather than a contract. In addition, there is a reflection of a 0.25 increase in this functional area. And that is not a new FTE, it's just a shifting of FTE. Previously, a portion of the management policy analyst time was in public health for the oversight of the mental health contract. That position is still providing that oversight, but it is decreasing the amount of time that's being spent there because it's been kind of brought up to date, and our management policy analyst, Amanda, has done an excellent job. And so that 0.25 will be able to focus more on some of the board's goals that have been identified through the strategic planning process. Additionally, this functional area includes the ARPA funds, which we spoke to a little bit ago. And through the ARPA funds, we are able to continue to support many of the board goals in accordance with the federal funding guidelines and the funding concept that goes through the fiscal year 24-25. This functional area includes the Board of Commissioners, which reflects a 4.5% COLA to the commissioner's stipends. And so I'm happy to answer any questions for the BOPTA as well as the other functional areas.
I just want to be clear which budget items we're covering in this section of the discussion, whether it's the 5 under the clerk and elections department and also the assessment and taxation, or are you
I was
considering?
just summarizing for the entire general government functional area, but yes, you can continue proceeding the way that you have been.
Okay. Good, because I don't want to have too many budget items kind of open for questions at one time. So right now, I want to take just items, the Board of Property Tax Appeals down through assessment and taxation, if there are any questions on those 5 items. No one. Okay. How about we next go, we have another item under culture and recreation, which is the fair general operations on page 428. I know Steele has talked about that. Do you have anything else, anything more to say on that?
I do not unless anybody has any questions.
I did have
And
one
I'm not
question.
seeing, go ahead.
Yeah, we talk in our plan that we intend to have 2 major concerts this summer, but the budget sort of is the same as it went last year when we only had 1. So should we be increasing our revenue for that second concert? Commissioner Baines? Commissioner Baines, did you? Yes.
So, oh, Kyle's here. I'll let him answer. Never mind.
Yeah. So at the time we were creating the budget, we were hoping to have a second concert on Saturday night, but being behind the 8 ball already with starting late in the planning and then looking at the list of available acts for that concert, we decided to just do the Friday night concert and forego the Saturday night concert. But that being said, we were planning on doing it with under the same type of budget, but the act that we had hired for our main act was much more economical this year, so we were going to be able to make it all work.
Right. Other questions? Okay. So now we have a large number of items, a couple under public safety and justice and a whole lot under the general government. I want to make sure that we have enough time for anybody to sort of look up, remind themselves of questions that they might have had. County Manager Boone, did you have anything you wanted to say on these items? I know Assistant County Manager Steele has spoken, but if you want to add anything.
Thanks, Chair Ogier, members of the Budget Committee. I don't really have anything else to add. Obviously, the general government functional area is kind of the bread and butter of the county. Focusing on a lot of the internal services that make all the gears turn within the organization. And they also represent some of the unique opportunities that the county's had with the ARPA dollars, which have been pivotal in really building some of the infrastructure within the organization. I'm really thinking about economic development, some of the social services programs that have been invested in as part of the ARPA dollars, and then really reinforcing our entire public health response capabilities. And so within the general government are some really, vital components as we move forward. I do want to mention one of the investments that the budget committee and the board made last year that's being instrumental is that we added resources to our human resources capabilities within the organization. It's what I have called the generational understaffing of our human resources function that has been, we've had two HR folks managing a county that's very complex and has, close to 300 employees. And we added one more position last year with the budget committee and the board's approval. And I think that we will see that that is going to make a big difference in the organization as we move forward. How we manage people, how we create culture in the organization is a primary concern of mine. And it's something that I think we're making great inroads in. But that position was really vital. The other part I'll say is that, we've been doing this budget process without a finance director, which I've said many times, but we are very much looking forward to having a finance director on board soon. And as part of us kicking off the budget process earlier, we will have hopefully a finance director working with us as we enter into the summer and engage the budget committee and the board in what next year looks like. So that's all that I have, Chair Ogier, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
So I'm going to leave this open for just a couple of minutes for people to make sure that there's nothing in these many budgets that they want to ask questions about. Yes, Commissioner Bangs.
So I just have an overarching comment just regarding this entire budget as a whole. With our timber dollar IP projections that have been released, I'm seeing on page 68 that our budget projections aren't reflective of the IPs that have been passed by the state forester. And so projections for 2024-25 and for 25-26 should be closer to 3 million, not the 5 million of where they are at. And so I'm just wanting to place in public record that I realize that this budget process, we can't pivot that quickly. But to have this reflected next year, to have us pivot coming forward, because there's no current lever for us to pull to change those projections for our fiscal future, at least not to my knowledge. And I'm poking every button and trying to pull every lever, and nothing is changing. And so I feel like we just need to accept those IPs that were passed by the state forester and have them reflected in our budget. So those are my thoughts.
Yes, Mr. Bone.
Yes, Chair Ogier, members of the board, and thank you, Commissioner Bangs. The ACP is certainly something that the board and staff have been monitoring. The projections will be updated, and I think as Commissioner Banks said, this is an ongoing, moving target where we have received some information that will be informative. What I will say is that likely the conversation's not over, depending on what may or may not happen with the state and further discussions with the legislature. And so I think Commissioner Banks is correct. There's just still a lot of other cards to be played in this whole discussion, not so much just about the ACP, but what the response to the ACP may be from some of our other governmental partners. So I think as we get more information, we will update those forecasts and we'll see how that impacts. One of the reasons why we've been doing a status quo budget this year, and I would say it's not going to be the only year, status quo budgets will be more of the norm as we move forward until we get some additional insight into how all these different gears are going to turn when it comes to a number of different governmental revenues, timber being one of those. Thank you.
I'm going to have Commissioner Thompson and then Commissioner Bangs.
Thank you, sir. I want to second everything that's been said by Commissioner Bangs. I want to thank her for her yo work on this topic, because she's been a warrior for our well-being as a county. I want to thank the staff for their incredibly difficult and challenging work. What I'm seeing is that when we're looking at economic development, we have a mindset that any economic development hurts the planet. So that's a challenge when we're looking at the essential fact of continuing economic development. When we look at our current tax base, we heard some public comment that called some money surplus timber revenue. I think we'd be well served to rename that, because surplus gives the perception that it's extra, it's fluff. It isn't. It's an essential reserve. I've heard from another former county commissioner who's now employed by an environmentalist organization to say that Clatsop County has all this money. This is horrifying to me, because we're looking at the impacts of the Habitat Conservation Plan, FEMA BIOP, the potential impact on transient occupancy tax. There are a variety of conditions and circumstances that threaten our continued capacity to provide essential public services. We've seen the breakdown in the transit district just in the past month. This requires careful attention and I want to say being grounded in fiscal reality. We can't make up numbers. We don't grow from a fantastical point of view. We grow from essential truth telling about our revenues and our expenditures. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. I think you are preaching to the choir here. Commissioner Bangs and then Commissioner Allen.
And I fully concur with what Commissioner Thompson just stated. Our budget is being closely reviewed by a number of special interest groups, and the identifying of surplus funds and that comment of Clatsop County has plenty of money is something that I face on a regular basis at state forums. And for us to, I think, be a little bit more serious and less glitter in regards to how we present our information. I'm sorry, a 1.4 million decrease for public safety in the sheriff's department is an absolute travesty. And so our need to communicate the travesty of this situation, I think, should by far overshadow the projections that are currently displayed in the document. And what is currently displayed is we have no problem. So when I'm speaking at a state level and trying to explain that, yes, we have a problem, I have no documentation other than, counties provided in regards to infographics or letters, but I have there's nothing reflected in the budget of the severity of the issue, so that can be translated to those special interest groups who are convinced that we have no problems. And so I guess I'm just trying to have our budget be more reflective of what our current future looks like, even though I do recognize that our, things can change. Right now, our projections just don't recognize that things have changed. And we're stuck for at least 2 years with those 2 IPs. So that's all I'm trying to, and I appreciate Commissioner Thompson. She's much more eloquent than I am trying to say this.
Commissioner Banks, I just want to clarify, you are really speaking about the projections for the future, not just the single year budget that we are considering here. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate. The IPs that came from the Board of Forestry and that were approved by the state forester projected an income level from state lands for just our county budget of around 3 million. That doesn't include our additional taxing districts that also receive funding. And so there's a $2 million gap between reality and what our previous projections used to be prior to this habitat conservation debacle.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Allen.
Yeah, I hope you can hear me. I'm traveling again. I want to thank Commissioner Banks for bringing this up, because this is the main issue I have this year too, is while this budget may work for this year, one of our considerations should be the sustainability and the ongoing concern in future years. And I think that looking at page 15, you know, when I look at drop in, 24, and then it's increasing in 25, and then you see a downhill slide. I don't think this reflects reality of what is if you had the projections where they really should be rather than as a status quo. Our forward-looking aspect is being missed in this particular cycle, because I think we're looking for some real potential decreases in other areas too, as it
I'm afraid, Ms. Allen, you have broken up and we can no longer hear you. Okay.
I'm sorry. I have no idea where I left you.
You were saying that the main issue is sustainability, and the forward aspects are being something.
Yeah, I think that in this particular budget, it works for this year, but when we're looking at it from an ongoing concern issue, I would say that you know, we're missing the mark just slightly by not pulling back maybe a little bit more. I think in the verbiage, when I read, I see, oh, we have some forecasts that might be decreased, but I don't see anywhere other than we're status quo. Is status quo enough? That's the one thing I cannot determine from this document, is how much should it be pulled back? Or is status quo gonna get us there? Because when I look at page 15, okay, and I look at that graph, if that graph is based upon numbers that are not real or pulled back, then I think we have a larger concern, because in 24, it goes down, this is the ending fund balance forecast, goes down to a little over 8 million, then it goes up in 25, and then you see just a significant decrease. Well, let's pull that back to some of the numbers that have been projected potentially rather than a status quo, and see what that looks like, because it might mean that this year should be a year it should be pulled back more. Just my thoughts. And I wanted to put that on the record.
Thank you. And I think this does lead to the sort of bigger question for the county management. Should we be focused entirely on where we stand for the current upcoming fiscal year, which is what a budget deals with, or should we be taking more into consideration a potential catastrophic drop in revenues? How do you think about that?
Well, if you're asking me, I think we should be taking worst case scenario. I think we should be budgeting extremely conservatively in this environment. I also don't understand from this budget. Last year we talked about the jail, and I know that's jumping just a bit, but is the jail operating fully, or are we still pulled back in some capacity, or is it at full utilization?
The sheriff is on the call. It is open and they are taking more inmates, but I will let him speak to it. Sheriff?
Yes, thank you. So the jail is fully operational. The full facility is open for use by any arrestees. The population is slowly going up at a sustainable rate. That is something that the staff can digest as they're learning the new facility. So yeah, the population has increased by 30 in the last 2.5 months, and that rate of growth looks like it'll be consistent. I think it'll taper off by the end of the year.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bangs?
To address the thought of, you know, is this budget okay versus projections moving forward? So I feel like we are fine this year in this particular budget, mainly because when we talk about our timber revenues, these are contracts that were sold 2 and 3 years ago that haven't been harvested yet. And so we have a small cushion that is basically harvest will still occur with contracts previously sold, at least through this year and possibly part of the next. So we won't see that fiscal cliff as those contracts start coming through, but we will see I would say a fiscal cliff in 2025-26, where we will see an actual drop off of revenue from timber. And that's just because of how sales work, state land sales work. And I do think, though, that the Department of Forestry will go bankrupt in the next year unless something changes for them. So there is that. There's a lot of moving targets, but I think this budget is okay. Next year budget, we definitely need to be reflecting the fiscal cliff that we will be facing.
Thank you. So sufficient for the day is the evil thereof. It's your, Ms. Allen, is your hand up? Do you have something more you wish to say, or is it you just haven't taken it down?
Yeah, I have one more comment, though. That is, the general fund stability was down to that 20 to 25% balance that is wanting to be kept there. That is a big,
Sorry, we've lost you.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Now we can, yeah.
Oh, sorry. So the general fund stabilization being voted in, I understand it was voted in and added to that ending fund balance that they want to keep in the general fund. That actually kind of gives a false sense of we have more than we do. And so that's kind of my concern too, when I look at this and look at the numbers and look at a few years back in the budgets. I think it's more of a concern, and I just want to put that on the record from my perspective, that this year should be pulled back just a little bit more. However, I do know that the county has done a really good job of spending less than what we budget. So I think that they will be on top of that and will be, as staff, cognizant of that. So I'll just leave it there.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands up, but I think it's probably appropriate for either Ms. Steele or Mr. Boone to respond to this general line of comments and questions.
Sure, Chair Ogier, members of the board. This is Don. So I think that this is a great discussion. This is similar to a discussion that staff have, and this is why we do 5-year projections and why we see this as like managing as kind of a cruise liner that you slowly turn the wheel because you know you can't make any fast turns, because fast turns for an organization are not good turns. And so we really look at this from a cruise liner perspective where we're making small turns as we go, and we want those to be, judicious, effective, pragmatic. At the end of the day, it's about making sure that the organization is stable so that we can provide vital services to the community. And that's something that is super important to really all of us. And I know it's important to the board. I think that certainly right now, there's been a lot of information that's been coming regarding the HCP. And it's been information that's still evolving. We're getting a little bit more clarity. At the same time that we're getting more clarity on the HCP, there's still uncertainties about what other help may be available to those taxing jurisdictions through the legislative process. And we haven't banked on that. And as we have received recent information now, it is true that that's not fully reflected in the projection, but that will be into the projections as we go into the next budget year. I feel very comfortable with this budget process, and part of it is because I feel that we are in a good place to adjust to whatever is going to happen as we update the projections given the HCP. There's a lot of other influences though on the county budget. HCP is only one of them. Some of them are trending favorable for us, some of them are challenging for us. And we talked a little bit about just the impacts of really COLA, cost of living, has on the organization, where 1% cost of living for salaries is basically $500,000. And so there's a lot of different factors. And so I'm really gratified to have the board and the budget committee have this conversation, because I think that it is a complex set of gears that are turning every day to make this county government function, and having the input and the guidance and the perspective of the budget committee and the board is really important as we do that. And so I feel comfortable with where we are this year. The projection model is going to be updated, and it'll be updated at the end of the year. The HCP will be one of those numbers, but then the ending fund balance will be another one of those. And as budget committee member Alan said, is that we have made annual concerted efforts to limit the expenditures that are appropriated every year, and that will continue as we move forward. So the budget is just one point in time in this fiscal management continuum. The others are making sure that we collect as much revenue that is available as possible, that we're advocating for ourselves in the legislature and in other governmental areas. And then the other is to really scrutinize expenditures of those appropriations so that our ending fund balance positions us to be that much more flexible going forward. Flexibility is what we are trying to do, because there's so much uncertainty at any given time. And again, sometimes the uncertainty falls on the positive side, sometimes it falls on the negative side. So when I look at it, as I've said in my previous message, is that I feel like we're in a stable place with a lot of uncertainty moving forward. And I would rather be at that stable place, but I'm also willing to actively manage what may come down the line. So what you will see in the fall as we start next year's budget process, between now and then, we'll have a lot better sense of what those actual numbers are, what years that those actual numbers pertaining to the HCP will actually impact our budget. And then hopefully we'll have a little bit more clarity about some of these other factors, including some COLA projections in the next couple of years, and some other pertinent data points. And so I hear the concern. I shared that concern with the board and the budget committee. I certainly am very attuned to it, because there's no way I couldn't be. And I will continue to be as we do this. And you may even hear me giving different direction to the organization mid-year to even reduce our expenditures further, depending upon how that goes. So, and that's more just of a reassurance that we are managing this 365 days a year. We're not managing it just through the budget process. So I don't know if Monica wants to add anything to that, but that's my contribution. Thank you, Chair Ogier.
Sure, thank
No,
you.
you captured it well, Don. Thank you.
Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you. And thank you, County Manager and Assistant County Manager. I trust your fiscal prudence. I trust your capacity to do what we would call adaptive management. That's a forestry pun, right? Adaptive management for county government as we maintain capacity. I appreciate that it's the role of a CPA to be conservative and to keep us from falling off a cliff. If you know what I mean, that's your function. I appreciate that. On the other hand, I would reassure you and say that some of us are working. I would like to say tirelessly, but I get tired sometimes. A lot of us are working tirelessly to, I want to say, refresh and grow our community's economic development, because that's really the balancing factor in this. The optimism that we use to further the well-being of our community, and the skill that we exercise and the effort to keep us growing on one segment of our economy, even as there are challenges to other segments. So I can't quantify optimism. I can't give you a number for that, but I can assure you that I share your concerns, and that I and others are doing our best to remediate any negative impacts that occur. And in the meantime, we trust our staff to manage effectively. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hey, are there any other questions on the general government section here? We have a few items under.
I'm sorry, David, does that include information systems? We're skipping around here and I'm.
Yeah, no, I know we are. It's very difficult. Yes, it
that,
includes information systems. If you have a question, please raise it now.
Okay, I just have one question. I don't know what we got in terms of total heads, but we've got the budget is about 265 FTE. And on page 314, we say that we replaced 247 laptops and 17 PCs. So I'm wondering, is that true? Is it we've replaced just about everyone's PC this year?
In regards to, I'm sorry, what page did you say it says that? 314?
314.
So in the 22-23 fiscal year, we have a 3-year lease with Dell. And so, yes, we do replace pretty much all county laptops and desktops as part of that lease. And so in 22-23 in July, that replacement happened. In some instances, not all employees have computers, like the many of the road workers do not have computers. But then we also do have additional computers that are in conference spaces, for public use. And so yes.
Okay, does that answers your question, Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else on these items? This really covers us all the way through the debt service and bond and UAL reserve fund. So anything at all on human resources or the budget and finance or general fund contingency, any of that. Okay, so we are, if not, we are really at the home stretch. We are going back to land use, housing, and transportation. There's 3 items here: county tourism, special projects, and fleet replacement, starting on page 380.
Yes, so just to reiterate, one of the requests in the county tourism, as I summarized earlier, is there is the request from the Lower Columbia Tourism Council, who we contract with to provide tourism promotion in a leave no trace method, to increase the funds that we're providing them by $20,000. And as mentioned, that is to finish up some work that they had received grant funding through Travel Oregon for. The original grant was for the Astoria Warrenton areas, and they would like to include Seaside and Cannon Beach on that. And it's to be able to increase accessibility for those with disabilities. Commissioner Thompson has a question.
Yes. No? Yes.
Good,
Oh,
good. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Anything on fleet replacement? That's a large budget item, and I think it probably is worth some explication there on how you manage that very large fleet of vehicles that we have.
so the fleet management and the fleet replacement, they're really confusing, and we should probably come up with more differentiating names. The fleet replacement is a smaller fund compared to fleet management, which we spoke of earlier. The fleet replacement is the building codes division. It's kind of talking back to fees. They want to make sure that when they're charging their fees on an annual basis, that they are capturing the true costs. And so oftentimes, if you just budget for a vehicle in 1 year to purchase a vehicle, it kind of it inflates what the annual costs were for that particular year. So by setting aside based on mileage per year, so that way they can replace vehicles based on the use of those vehicles, they set aside a mileage amount and it goes into that fleet replacement fund. The special projects fund, which fleet replacement falls into, is for general fund projects. And since building codes is not a general fund department, they set those funds aside separately so that they do not get commingled.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions on these last few items? Okay, I am going to assume that there are no questions on inactive budgets. So that brings us to the end of the budget line items, and I would like to ask if anyone, any members of the budget committee has any general comments for the good of the order, and if they do, we will take them now. Otherwise, we will move on to if there are any public comments. So comments from members. Commissioner Banks.
I just had a question. It's not so much a comment, but the amount of jumping around that we do throughout the budget process, is that just so that we can organize which staff members need to be present for which days?
Yes, that was the intention. And so, as we've gone this method of hybrid, in-person, virtual, we did shift it a little bit to try and make it a little bit more convenient in regards to doing the overall functional summary presentation. But we will work on the agenda next year, but it is intended to be able to allow staff to be present. And then once their budgets are done, they wouldn't have to come back. One thing, I apologize if there are other committee members that have something to mention, but one thing that did not get discussed that needs to be discussed is the salaries and the stipends for the elected officials. And so just a reminder, the budget committee lay members, citizen members, they set the commissioner's stipend. And as previously mentioned, there is a proposed 4.5% cost of living increase, which is reflected amongst what was proposed for employees as well. And then the Board of Commissioners set the salaries for the DA and the sheriff, which is set 10% above the person, their deputy, sorry, that they supervise. So the citizen committees will have to set the board's stipend.
And what page is that on, Monica?
Maybe 277 in the agenda. It comes under.
Yes, it is page 277. Thank you, Norm. (277) speaks to the accomplishments of the board for the 22-23 fiscal year. And then page 279 is the line item for the commissioner stipends. And Tita has a question. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Don.
So I'll defer to you, Chair Ogier. I was just going to offer that if I was just going to offer that if there was an opportunity for me to give a little background on the board stipend related to the charter and whatnot, if that might be helpful for the lay budget committee members. But
I very much appreciate that.
Thank you. So how I would characterize the county charter is that we are singularly unique across the entire state regarding our form of government and the compensation or the lack of compensation for the board of commissioners. Out of the 36 counties, which 9 are also home rule, we are the only one that has a charter provision that specifically states that county commissioners shall serve without salary. There are other counties that have similar forms of government, but they don't have that particular language in their charter. Hood River is a county that is similar in many regards. They don't have that salary language, and they're compensated at about the same level as our board. But I just want to really say that we are singularly unique in the state. And so the charter does state specifically, commissioners shall serve without salary, period. As a recognition of services rendered, each shall serve with a stipend set up by lay budget committee members. And so that's basically what the guidance is through the charter. As Monica mentioned, we did set aside 4.5%, which is similar to the growth of other salaries based upon collective bargaining agreements and what staff's recommendation will be for the non-represented folks as we move forward. But it is unique. It is a charter provision. And so that's where we are, is with staff's recommendation, at least through the budget process, that there be a 4.5% adjustment to the stipend amount. Just so the budget committee knows, 4.5% would be about a $4,300 adjustment to the overall stipends for the board.
Ms. Montero.
Thank you. Last year we made, if I recall correctly, we made some major changes to this line item. I also sit on the budget committee for Seaside, and while cost of living increases are being given at less than what the CPI is, we were told that the CPI is 6.53%, I think. And it seems to me, since this is not a salary, that, and our commissioners are at a stipend, that we should maybe consider going to the CPI as opposed to the COLA that's being provided to employees.
Okay, thank you. Are there other comments? I mean, my own feeling is that the commissioners should receive, are essentially all like management, and should receive increases in line with management. So I would, at this point, disagree with Ms. Montero, but I'd like to hear Mr. Brown or Ms. Allen if you have any thoughts on this.
Just for me, we've talked about a 4.5% COLA for I don't know if it's classified people, but the represented people. I've seen, I will say, many management positions getting double-digit increases. So if there was a way of breaking out the salary increases to non-represented, I think that might give us a little different picture.
Sorry, if I could just
Yep.
clarify, no management positions are getting every person when a COLA increase is provided. It is the same across the board. So management positions, what will be presented to the Board of Commissioners is the same for all management. It would be if a 4.5%, which is what is proposed in the budget. So in some instances, when you're looking at line item, Norm, and a management or any other staff position might increase more than the 4.5% COLA or so forth. Like I mentioned, in some instances, we have retirements that are taking place. And
Right.
so there are vacation payouts that might be happening per, the personnel policies. And so that is when you might see a greater increase in their salary line item. But a COLA, when presented to a group, whether it's management, unrepresented, or a bargaining group, is the same for the whole group.
So that could also be a partial increase in FTE assigned to a particular budget. I knew that there's some other explanations for some of that, but okay, so then I'll kind of withdraw my comment, and I guess the 4.5% seems more equal then.
Ms. Allen, are you still with us? I'd like to get, if you have an opinion on this.
Yes, I am. I was able to connect to Wi-Fi here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear much of the discussion. I was having Wi-Fi trouble. But so I really don't have a comment, I guess, because I didn't hear much of anything other than what Norm just said.
Just to recap, the budget proposes a 4.5% increase in the stipend for the county commissioners, which Assistant County Manager Steele clarified is in the same as the COLA that all employees will be getting. Ms. Montero suggested that the commissioners should receive a somewhat higher increase in line with the consumer price index. And I think both Mr. Brown and I were not persuaded by that argument. Tita, I'm sorry, Ms. Montero, you wanted to say something?
Sure. So I probably didn't express enough of this. I think for most of our commissioners, that if they took the stipend that they're paid, and remember, our charter says they are not salaried. They are not, so somebody who's not salaried is not an employee. That's why I'm looking at this differentially. But if you took for our commissioners this stipend that they receive and you divided it by the hours that they work, I would suspect that most of that is below minimum wage, if you want to look at it from an employee standpoint. And that's why, you know, we have a CPI. We know that we've had an especially large increase in the cost of living. And that doesn't mean that the cost of living is any less for the expenses that our commissioners incur. We being the only county that does not have commissioners paid on salary, I think we need to keep looking at how we do reimburse them for their expenses and give some kind of compensation for the time that they spend on county work. And that's why I am a proponent of going with the CPI.
Ms. Allen?
So I think an important thing here is this isn't for a salary at all. So it shouldn't really be compared to a salary, so to speak. I think what it needs to reflect is their actual expenses of doing their jobs, that they should not be incurring the fuel, the increase in fuel, the increase in cost for purchasing a computer. I mean, during the chip shortage, if they needed a computer, it was much more expensive. Everything is costing more. So their operations throughout the county is what it should be based on, which I kind of agree with Tita that might be better based on the CPI versus the COLA that is based on a salary for living costs. Because as inflation increases, those costs that they have are exponentially also going to increase. And I don't know if there's ever been a study or anything to compare or look at, you know, what it is costing a commissioner to do their job. And is this even covering what it's costing for them to travel and be able to do the things they need to do without it coming out of their pocket? Because that's, I think, what this is meant for.
So let me just ask a clarifying question. The stipend is in lieu of being able to claim expenses for mileage, meals, and that at hotels as well?
Chair Ogier, members of the board. So the stipend really deals with the in-county expenses of doing the Board of Commissioners role. For all the out-of-county expenses, they are still reimbursed for travel, hotels, any kind of expense out of county. And so the out-of-county reimbursement is an exception and an addition to what they are doing in county. And so what the in-county does really is the stipend provides for their in-county transportation, their just all the expenses regarding performing their in-county function. And so in addition, they receive support, the board members do, from the county regarding technology, equipment. And so the county provides those. That's not part of the stipend. The county provides all the tools that the board needs to do their jobs. And so so it's really kind of a combination of events. The stipend by the charter really was to address the in-county work of the Board of Commissioners, if that's helpful.
It is very much so. Ms. Allen, did you have another comment? Your hand is raised, your electronic hand.
No, I'm sorry. I don't know how to, let me try to get it down.
Okay. So let me ask, is this an item where we need a separate motion and vote? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So the voters are Ms. Allen, Mr. Brown, Ms. Montero, and myself.
So I would like to make a motion then. And
Right on.
my motion is that we increase the compensation, I guess that's the right word, for the county commissioners by 6.5%.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, Ms. Montero moves, Ms. Allen seconds. Those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 And those against, say nay.
Nay.
Nay. Okay. So what does that mean? 2 for, 2 against. Where do ties go?
We can't move forward with a tie. We need 3 of you to agree on something, so it would require another motion and another vote.
I'll change mine, Mrs. Gretchen, to nay, and we'll move forward.
Okay.
Chairman Ozier,
Yes, Mr. Brown.
recognizing the 4.5 recommendation might be a little on the low side, but that we've spoken a lot about doing a conservative budget. And I'm feeling that we need to live in that spirit. I would like to recommend and make a motion that we increase the stipend to 5%.
I'll second that.
All right. Those in favor? Aye.
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 5%.
If I may, was that a unanimous? Just since we're virtual, if I can take a roll call vote. So I will start with Tita,
Yes.
Gretchen,
Yes.
Norm,
Yes.
and Chair Ozier.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we also have to vote on the compensation for the district attorney. What again?
No,
what
I apologize, Chair. The Board of Commissioners are who set the salaries for the DA and the sheriff.
Okay. So that's the only thing that we had.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. So are there any other comments from commissioners for the, or committee members for the good of the order about the budget? Seeing no hands, are there any members of the public at this point who wish to make a comment? All right. We then,
Sorry to interrupt. Before you proceed, I do just want to note the one change that did not appear in the proposed budget that we discussed at our meeting on the 10th was the $1,000 for the Arts Council in the video lottery fund. So that is something that is not reflective in the printed documents that you all have, but is a proposal that we would like to make sure is included when you approve the budget.
okay, and so you will, I hope, provide the language that you wish us to use in that, for that item.
Yes, when you do the approval of the budget, if you could just state with the proposed staff changes.
Okay. So I am going to ask now, is there a motion to approve the budget with a tax rate of $1 and 53.38 cents per $1,000 and 7 cents per $1,000 for fairgrounds local option total levy for bonded indebtedness of $1,176,000 with the proposed staff changes? I hope someone will make this motion.
I so move.
I'll
Mr.
second.
Mr. Brown moves, Ms. Montero seconds. Do you need a roll call or is a voice vote sufficient?
Sorry, since that was a second and a motion, I will go ahead and do a roll call just in case anybody says nay for the final approval of the budget. And so I will start with Chair Quiva,
Aye.
Vice Chair Banks,
Aye.
Chair Thompson,
Only commissioner, but it's an aye.
or sorry, Commissioner Thompson. I'm just like, I'm on a roll today.
Thank you for the promotion.
Yes. Gretchen,
Aye, or
Tita,
yes.
Aye.
Norm,
Aye.
and Chair Ogier.
Aye.
Thank you.
So the motion passes. I want to thank staff enormously for their hard work in preparing this budget, and I am always amazed at especially Monica's ability to answer any question about any line item in any one of these old budgets. It's just amazing to me that she can do that, and all of this, especially without having a finance director. And I, of course, thank all of us volunteers for jumping in here. With that, I think we can entertain, unless I'm missing something, we can entertain
I would just say, Chair Ozer, you did an excellent job in running these meetings. And I really appreciate the engagement and the discussion from all the commission, the budget committee, and from the staff. It was a very well done budget. And again, great work by Monica and Don and crafting it. And again, you handled the meetings very well. Way to go, Chair Ozer.
Thank you. And again, thanks to all. Let us have a motion to adjourn. Chair.
I would so move.
Chair Quila, a second on that.
I'll second.
Montero, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned, and we have a Clatsop County budget for the next fiscal year. Thank you all very much.
Well done.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.